Marcus Bennett's hands trembled as the steel cuffs bit into his wrists. Not from fear he'd faced worse in Kabul, but from the bitter recognition of what this moment meant. 23 years of service, 3 Purple Hearts, an FBI badge in his pocket that the officer hadn't bothered to let him reach. All of it worthless in the eyes of the cop who saw only his skin color. The morning sun beat down on the Atlanta park as curious onlookers pulled out their phones. Marcus closed his eyes and made a choice that would change everything. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story, please subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. Watch until the end to see how this unfolds and comment below with your city so I can see how far this story reaches. Now let's continue. Marcus Bennett had learned patience in Afghanistan. 3 tours taught you that rushing got people killed. So when he saw Officer Derek Chandler watching him from across Piedmont Park that Tuesday morning, he didn't move, didn't react, just turned another page in his book and waited. "You see that guy?" Derek muttered into his radio, eyes locked on Marcus. "Black male, 40s, sitting alone. Fits the description from the robbery last night." The radio crackled. "What description, Chandler? Be specific." Derek's jaw tightened. "You know, tall, dark hoodie, sitting there like he owns the place. That's half the men in Atlanta. You got more. He looks wrong. I'm checking it out." Marcus watched the officer's approach in his peripheral vision, the confident stride, the hand resting on the belt fingers drumming near the gun. He'd seen it before too many times. His chest tightened, but he kept his breathing steady. Control the moment. Don't give them a reason. "Morning," Derek said, stopping 3 feet away. Too close for casual, close enough to intimidate. Marcus looked up, marking his page with his finger. "Morning, officer. What brings you out here today?" "Reading." Marcus held up the book. "It's a nice morning." Derek's eyes narrowed. "I've been walking this park for 6 years. Never seen you here before." "I transferred to the Atlanta field office last month." The words came out calm, measured. "Still learning the neighborhood." "Field office?" Derek's hand moved to his hip. "What field office?" "FBI." The word hung between them like smoke. Derek's expression shifted surprise, then skepticism, then something harder. Defensive. "Right," Derek said, his voice sharp with sarcasm. "And I'm the mayor. Let me see some ID." Marcus set his book down carefully. "Am I being detained? Don't start that sovereign citizen nonsense with me. ID now." "I asked a simple question, officer. Am I being detained, or am I free to go?" Derek's face flushed. "You fit the description of a suspect. I need to verify your identity." "What suspect?" Marcus kept his voice level, but something cold was settling in his stomach. This wasn't going to end well. He could feel it. "Be specific." "Armed robbery. Happened last night about 2 miles from here. Suspect was a black male in his 40s wearing a dark hoodie." Derek gestured at Marcus's navy sweatshirt. "Sound familiar?" "I'm wearing blue, and I have an alibi. I was in a briefing with the assistant director until 11 p.m. Marcus reached slowly for his pocket. "My credentials are..." "Don't move." Derek's hand went to his gun. "Keep your hands where I can see them." Marcus froze, hands visible on the bench. The old training kicked in automatically. Don't escalate. Stay calm. Live to fight another day. "I'm reaching for my FBI credentials," Marcus said quietly. "They're in my right front pocket. I'm going to move my hands slowly. Is that acceptable?" "I said don't move." "Then how do I show you ID?" Marcus heard the edge creeping into his voice and forced it back down. "You're asking me to identify myself, but you're not letting me comply. Which is it?" A jogger slowed nearby, watching. Then another. Derek glanced at the growing audience, and Marcus saw something shift in his expression. Pride. Ego. The refusal to back down in front of witnesses. "Stand up," Derek ordered. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." "For what charge?" "Obstruction. Failure to identify. Stand up or I'll add resisting arrest." Marcus stood slowly, his book falling to the ground. The irony wasn't lost on him, a first edition of James Baldwin's The Fire Next Time, lying in the dirt, while history repeated itself. "This is a mistake," Marcus said, turning around. "I'm Special Agent Marcus Bennett, FBI. You can verify." I said, "Hands behind your back." The cuffs went on too tight. Marcus felt the metal dig into his wrists, but he didn't protest. Around them, more people were stopping. Phones came out. He heard the murmurs, the shock in their voices. What did he do? He was just reading? This is crazy. "You're making a mistake," Marcus repeated, quieter now. Not pleading, just stating fact. "We'll see about that." Derek grabbed his arm, started walking him toward the patrol car parked on the path. "Got a lot of guys claiming to be things they're not. FBI agents don't hang out in parks looking like bums." Marcus wanted to tell him about the surveillance operation he'd been running all morning, about the drug trafficking ring using the park as a meeting point, about how blending in was literally his job. But he stayed silent. Let the man dig his own grave. The walk to the car felt endless. Marcus was aware of every eye on him, every phone camera recording. His mother would see this, his daughter, his team. The shame of it burned worse than the cuffs. "Get in." Derek opened the back door, one hand on Marcus's head as he guided him into the seat. The door slammed shut. Through the metal mesh separating front from back, Marcus watched Derek pull out his radio. "Dispatch, this is Chandler. I've got one in custody. Need to verify an identity. Claims to be FBI." Static. Then a woman's voice, sharp with confusion. "He claims to be FBI." "Yeah, probably stolen credentials or something. Running him now." "What's the name?" "Haven't gotten it yet. He wouldn't cooperate." "Derek." The voice changed, became more urgent. "Did you say he claims to be FBI? From where?" "I don't know. Atlanta office," he said. Derek was looking at paperwork, distracted. "Why?" "Derek, we got a bolo from the Bureau this morning. They've got an agent running an op in Piedmont Park. Undercover surveillance. Did you—" Derek's hands stopped moving. Marcus watched the color drain from his face through the mesh. "Dispatch, stand by." Derek got out of the car, walked around to Marcus's door, opened it slowly. "Sir, I need to ask you something." "Now you want to talk." Marcus kept his voice flat. "What's your full name and badge number?" "Special Agent Marcus James Bennett, badge number 8734. Would you like my supervisor's direct line, or should I call him myself?" "Oh, wait." Marcus lifted his cuffed hands. "I can't." Derek fumbled for his cuff keys. His hands were shaking. "Sir, there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding, Officer Chandler." Marcus watched him struggle with the cuffs. "You saw a black man in a park and decided he was a criminal. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a choice." The cuffs came off. Marcus rubbed his wrists, feeling the deep red marks the metal had left. "I was responding to a call." "What call, from who?" Marcus stood up, stepped out of the car. He was 3 inches taller than Derek, and he didn't back away. "Be specific." "Someone reported a suspicious person." "Suspicious how?" "What was I doing that was suspicious?" "Reading, sitting, breathing while black." Derek's radio crackled. "Chandler, what's your status? Do you need backup?" Marcus reached for his pocket, slowly, deliberately, and pulled out his credentials. Flipped them open. The gold badge caught the sunlight. "Tell dispatch you're fine," Marcus said quietly. "Tell them you just detained an FBI agent for doing his job. Tell them how that happened." Derek stared at the badge like it might bite him. His face had gone from red to white to a sickly gray. "This is Chandler. Status is, Code 4. No backup needed." "Copy that. Lieutenant wants to see you when you get back." Marcus could hear the doom in those words. He should have felt satisfied, vindicated, but all he felt was tired. Bone-deep tired of having this same conversation, playing this same scene in 1,000 different variations across his lifetime. "I could make this bad for you," Marcus said, pocketing his credentials. "Very bad. Do you understand that?" Derek nodded, unable to meet his eyes. "I could call my SAC right now. Have him call your chief. By the end of the day, you'd be lucky to have a job as a parking enforcement officer." "Sir, but I'm not going to do that." Marcus picked up his book from where it had fallen, brushed off the dirt. "You know why?" Derek shook his head. "Because you're going to do something for me instead." Marcus stepped closer, voice dropping. "You're going to remember this moment. Every time you see someone who doesn't look like what you think they should look like, every time you make an assumption based on skin color or clothes or neighborhood, you're going to remember today. Remember how wrong you were. Remember how close you came to destroying your career because you couldn't see past your own prejudice." "I'm not prejudiced," Derek started. "Don't." Marcus held up a hand. "Don't insult both of us. You made a judgment call based on my appearance. That's textbook profiling. The question is what you do with that information now." A cruiser pulled up behind Derek's car. A Latino officer in her 40s got out, took in the scene with sharp eyes. "Chandler, what's going on here?" "Sergeant Rodriguez." Derek's voice was weak. There was a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" Rodriguez looked at Marcus at his wrists, still bearing the mark of handcuffs at the book in his hand. Her expression hardened. "What kind of misunderstanding?" Marcus extended his hand. "Special Agent Marcus Bennett, FBI. Officer Chandler detained me while I was conducting surveillance. We were just clearing up the confusion." Rodriguez shook his hand, her grip firm, her eyes apologetic. "Agent Bennett, I'm very sorry about this. Derek, my car. Now." "Sergeant, if you'll let me explain. Now." Derek walked to Rodriguez's cruiser like a man heading to his execution. Marcus watched them go, heard the beginning of what was clearly going to be a very one-sided conversation. His phone buzzed, a text from his partner. "You good? Saw the whole thing from the surveillance van. Want me to come out?" Marcus typed back, "I'm fine. Target just showed up. West entrance. Keep on him." He settled back onto the bench, opened his book, and tried to focus on the words, but his hands were still trembling slightly, not from fear, from the overwhelming exhaustion of having to prove his humanity over and over in 100 small ways every single day. 15 minutes later, Rodriguez approached alone. Derek's patrol car was gone. "Agent Bennett, may I sit?" Marcus gestured to the bench. She sat, keeping a respectful distance. "I sent Derek back to the station," she said. "He'll be facing a formal review. This isn't the first complaint we've had about his conduct, but it's the most serious. I want you to know that this doesn't represent our department's values." "Doesn't it?" Marcus closed his book. "How many complaints before this one?" Rodriguez hesitated. 3 in the past year. And he's still on patrol, still interacting with the public. It's complicated. Union protection's lack of clear evidence. "It's not complicated, Sergeant. He's a problem officer and everyone knows it, but no one wants to deal with the paperwork." Marcus stood up. "I've seen it 100 times. The bad cops get passed around, moved to different units, given retraining that doesn't retrain anything. Meanwhile, people like me," he gestured at himself, "we're the ones who pay the price." "You're right." Rodriguez stood too. "You're absolutely right, and I'm sorry. If you want to file a formal complaint—" "I don't." Marcus saw her surprise. "Not because I'm forgiving him, because I know how it goes. I file a complaint, there's an investigation, and in 6 months, he gets a written warning and goes right back to doing the same things. Meanwhile, I become that agent who got a cop in trouble. And the next time I need local PD backup, there's suddenly a delay in response time. That shouldn't happen. But it does. We both know it does." Marcus picked up his backpack. "Here's what I want instead. I want you to watch him. Really watch him. Not just for policy violations, but for the pattern, the assumptions, the people he targets. And when you see it, when not, if I want you to do something about it, before it turns into something worse than a wrongful detention." Rodriguez nodded slowly. "I can do that." "Good." Marcus started to walk away, then stopped. "Sergeant, off the record. Yes. I grew up in Atlanta, 5 miles from here. My father was a pastor, my mother was a teacher. I played football at Georgia Tech. Got recruited by the FBI right out of college. Did 3 tours in Afghanistan as a liaison. Came back, worked counterterrorism for 15 years. Made special agent 2 years ago." He paused. "And none of that mattered when your officer looked at me this morning. All he saw was a black man in a park. That's the problem. That's what needs to change." Rodriguez didn't have an answer for that. Marcus didn't expect one. He walked back to the surveillance van parked 3 blocks away, climbed in through the back doors. His partner, Tommy Chen, looked up from the monitors. "You okay?" "Yeah." Marcus sat down heavily, rubbed his face. "Target. Came and went. Made the drop. We got it all on camera." Tommy hesitated. "We also got what happened with you on camera. You want me to send it to professional standards?" "No." "Marcus." I said no. We've got a case to work. That's what matters. But it did matter. Marcus knew it mattered. As he watched the surveillance footage of their target, he was also watching the smaller screen showing his own detention, watching himself comply, stay calm, do everything right, and still end up in handcuffs. His phone rang. The caller ID said, "Mom." "Hey, Mama." "Marcus James Bennett. Don't you hey Mama me. I just saw a video on Facebook of you being arrested, in a park, reading a book. Are you okay? Did they hurt you?" "I'm fine, Mama. It was just a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Her voice went sharp. "That's what we're calling it now. When I was a girl, they called it something else, something that hasn't changed as much as we'd like to think." "Mama, did you show them your badge?" "I tried to. He wouldn't let me reach for it." A long silence. Then quietly, "Your father dealt with this too, you know. All those years in the pulpit serving the community, and he still got pulled over twice a month for matching a description. It never stopped making him angry, but it did make him tired." Marcus closed his eyes. "I remember. I just worry about you, baby. Every time you leave the house, every time you don't answer your phone. I worry that the badge won't be enough, that the uniform won't matter, that all your accomplishments won't add up to enough to keep you safe from someone who's already decided what you are." "I know, Mama. I worry too." After he hung up, Tommy didn't say anything, just kept working, giving Marcus space. But eventually he asked, "You want to know what I think?" "Not really." "I think you should file a complaint. This guy needs to be stopped before he does something worse." "He won't be stopped. You know that. He'll get a slap on the wrist and a refresher course in sensitivity training, and then he'll be right back out there." "Maybe, but at least there'd be a record, documentation. So when he does something worse, and people can't say there were no warning signs." Marcus considered that. Tommy was right. He usually was. "You know what the worst part is?" Marcus said after a long moment. "For about 30 seconds when he was putting those cuffs on, I thought about fighting back. Pulling my badge, making him look stupid in front of all those cameras, showing everyone what an idiot he was." "Why didn't you—" "Because I've seen what happens when black men resist arrest, even when they're in the right, even when they're the victim. I've investigated those cases. I've sat across from crying mothers and watched footage of their sons being shot because a cop feared for his safety. And I knew that if I made one wrong move, if I gave Chandler even half a reason to claim he felt threatened, I could end up dead. My badge wouldn't save me. My service wouldn't matter. I'd just be another statistic." The van fell silent except for the soft hum of equipment. "I'm filing a report," Tommy said finally. "Not a complaint. Just a witness statement of what I observed. Factual, procedural. You don't have to be involved." Marcus wanted to argue, but he was too tired. Too worn down by the weight of it all. "Do what you need to do," he said. Later that afternoon, back at the field office, Marcus wrote up his surveillance report. Stuck to the facts. The target, the drop, the evidence collected. Professional, clean. He didn't mention the detention, didn't mention the handcuffs, or the public humiliation, or the way his hands had shaken afterward. That wasn't relevant to the case, but his supervisor, Assistant Director Sarah Mitchell, called him into her office anyway. "I heard about what happened this morning," she said without preamble. She was a white woman in her 50s, former Army JAG, and she didn't waste words. "Are you filing charges?" "No, ma'am." "Why not?" "Because it won't change anything." "That's defeatist Agent Bennett, and not like you." Marcus sat down without being invited. Mitchell raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. "With respect, ma'am, it's not defeatist. It's realistic. I file charges what happens internal investigation. Maybe he gets suspended with pay. Maybe he gets desk duty for a few months. Then he's back on the street and now he's got a grudge against the FBI, against me specifically. And the next time we need Atlanta PD's cooperation on a case, guess who suddenly can't be reached? So we just let it slide. Let bad cops be bad cops because it's politically inconvenient. That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying? Agent? Marcus took a breath. I'm saying that I'm tired of being the test case, the example, the teaching moment. I just want to do my job without having to constantly prove I deserve to be here. Is that too much to ask? Mitchell's expression softened slightly. No, it's not. And I'm sorry you're in this position. But this is bigger than you. You know that. This officer detained a federal agent on camera while that agent was conducting an authorized operation. That's not just racial profiling. That's interference with a federal investigation. The brass is watching this. They want to know how we handle it. Of course they do. Marcus laughed bitterly. Let me guess they want to make a statement. Show that we don't tolerate discrimination. Turn me into a poster boy for police reform. Would that be so bad? Yes. Marcus stood up, unable to sit still anymore. Yes, it would be bad, because I'm not a symbol. I'm not a lesson plan. I'm a federal agent trying to do my job. And every time something like this happens, every time I become the story, instead of the work, it undermines everything I've accomplished. Suddenly, I'm not the agent who broke the Hernandez trafficking ring or solved the Carter kidnapping. I'm that black agent who got arrested. That's how people remember me. Mitchell stood too, came around her desk. Marcus, I understand your frustration, but hiding from this won't make it go away, and it won't help the next agent or the next civilian who gets profiled by Officer Chandler. So what do you want me to do? I want you to let me handle this, officially. Bureau channels. Let us make the complaint. You just stick to your statement, factual, procedural. You don't have to be the face of it. Marcus thought about that. It was a compromise. Not perfect, but maybe the best he could hope for. And Chandler, he'll face consequences, real ones. I'll make sure of it. Marcus wanted to believe her, but he'd been disappointed too many times before. Okay, he said finally. Okay, handle it. But as he left her office and went back to his desk, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this was just beginning, that what had started as a simple morning in the park was about to become something much bigger and much more complicated than anyone expected. The video hit social media at 6:47 p.m. Marcus was in the middle of his daughter's piano recital when his phone started buzzing. Then Tommy's phone. Then every phone in the auditorium seemed to light up at once. "Dad, your phone," Jasmine whispered from the stage, her fingers frozen over the keys. Marcus silenced it, mouthed, "Sorry," and tried to focus on the Mozart, but the buzzing didn't stop. Text after text, email after email. By the time Jasmine finished her piece, Marcus had 43 notifications. "I need to step out," he told his ex-wife Claire, who was sitting 2 seats over with her new husband. "Now, Marcus, it's her recital." "I know, I'll be right back." Outside in the lobby, he pulled up the video. Someone had edited the footage from multiple phone cameras, spliced it together with his body cam footage that Tommy must have leaked. The title made his stomach drop. FBI agent handcuffed while black Atlanta cops shocking arrest. 3 million views in 2 hours. Oh, God, Marcus breathed. His phone rang. Sarah Mitchell. "Have you seen it?" she asked. "Just now." "It's everywhere. CNN picked it up, Fox News, MSNBC. They're calling it the next viral police brutality case. The director wants to speak with you tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. sharp." "Sarah, I didn't authorize this release." "I know. We're looking into how the footage got out, but right now that's not our biggest problem. The biggest problem is that Officer Chandler just gave an interview to a local news station claiming you were the aggressor, that you threatened him." Marcus felt his jaw clench. "That's a lie." "I know it's a lie. The footage proves it's a lie, but his union rep is spinning this as an FBI agent abusing his authority to intimidate a local officer just doing his job. They're making you the villain, Marcus." "Of course they are." Marcus leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. "That's how this always goes, isn't it? The victim becomes the perpetrator. Which is why we need to get ahead of this. The Bureau's putting together a press conference for tomorrow afternoon. We want you there." "No." "Marcus." I said no, I'm not doing a press conference. I'm not becoming the face of this. You already are the face of this. The video is out there. Your name is out there. You can either control the narrative or let Chandler and his union control it for you. Marcus wanted to argue, but Claire was standing in the doorway, her expression tight with anger. "I have to go," he told Sarah. 8 a.m. Marcus, director's office. Don't make me send agents to collect you." She hung up. Marcus pocketed his phone and braced himself. "Really?" Claire said, her voice sharp. "You couldn't give Jasmine one night where it's not about your job. Claire, it's not like that. It's exactly like that. Do you know what she told me yesterday? She said she barely sees you anymore. That when you are around, you're always on your phone or thinking about work. And now, in the middle of her recital, there's a situation. There's always a situation. There's always some case, some emergency, some reason why your daughter comes second." Claire stepped closer, lowering her voice. "She's 13 years old, Marcus. She needs her father, not an FBI agent. Her father." The words hit harder than they should have, because Claire was right. He'd been so focused on proving himself on being twice as good to get half as far that he'd let the most important things slip away, like his marriage, like his relationship with his daughter. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "You're right. I'll do better." "I've heard that before." Claire turned to go back inside, then paused. "There's a video of you online, being arrested. Jasmine saw it. Her friends saw it. Do you have any idea what that's like for her, seeing her father treated like a criminal? I was doing my job." "I know. And I'm proud of you for keeping your cool, for not making it worse. But Marcus, this is going to follow her. Kids are cruel. They're going to talk. They're going to ask questions. And she's going to have to deal with that." Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. He hadn't thought about that. Hadn't considered how this would affect Jasmine beyond the immediate embarrassment. "Can I talk to her?" Claire hesitated, then nodded. "After the recital. Not before. She needs to focus." Marcus sat through the rest of the performances in a daze, watched Jasmine play 2 more pieces, her face serious with concentration. She was good, really good. When had that happened? When had his little girl become this poised, talented young woman? After the applause died down and the families started filing out. Marcus found Jasmine by the refreshment table, nervously picking at a cookie. "Hey, superstar," he said, trying to keep his voice light. "You were amazing up there." "Thanks." She didn't look at him. "Jazz about the video." "Everyone's already seen it, Dad, like everyone. Brittany texted me during the recital to ask if you were okay. Then Madison, then half my class. It's all over TikTok." Marcus felt his heart sink. "I'm sorry. I never wanted you to be part of this." "I know." Jasmine finally looked up at him, and he was shocked to see tears in her eyes. "But I was scared. When I saw that video, I was so scared. What if he'd shot you? What if you hadn't been able to show him your badge? What if—" Her voice broke. Marcus pulled her into a hug, feeling her shake against him. "I'm okay. I'm right here. Nothing bad happened. But it could have. That's what Mom always says, that every time you leave for work, there's a chance you won't come back. And I never really believed it until I saw that video, until I saw how that cop looked at you like you were nothing, like your life didn't matter." "My life matters," Marcus said, though the words felt hollow. "And I'm good at my job. I know how to stay safe." "You shouldn't have to." Jasmine pulled back, wiping her eyes. "You were just sitting there, reading, and he still treated you like a criminal. How is that fair? It wasn't fair. Marcus knew it wasn't fair. But how did you explain systemic racism to a 13-year-old? How did you tell your daughter that the world was going to judge her by the color of her skin before they ever got to know her heart?" "It's not fair," he admitted. "And I wish I could tell you it'll get better, that by the time you're my age, things will be different. But I don't know if that's true. So instead, I'm going to tell you what my father told me. You can't control how people see you, but you can control who you are. Be excellent, be kind, be strong, and never ever let anyone make you feel like you're less than you are." Jasmine nodded, but Marcus could see the doubt in her eyes, the fear, and he hated that this was the lesson she had to learn at 13. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He lay in bed scrolling through the comments on the video, each one making him feel worse. This is why people don't trust cops. FBI agent or not, he was still profiled for being black. Disgusting. That cop should be fired immediately, no excuses. But then there were others. He shouldn't have resisted. Just show your ID and move on. Why was he dressed like that if he's really FBI? Seems suspicious to me. Another race baiter trying to get a cop in trouble. Pathetic. Marcus threw his phone across the room. It hit the wall and clattered to the floor screen intact. Of course it was intact. Nothing ever broke the way you wanted it to. At 7:45 a.m., Marcus walked into the FBI headquarters building in downtown Atlanta. He'd worn his best suit, his crispest white shirt, his most conservative tie. Armor. That's what clothes were when you looked like him. Armor against assumptions. Sarah was waiting by the elevator, 2 cups of coffee in her hands. She offered him one without a word. "Thanks," he said. "You look like hell." "I feel like hell." They rode up to the director's floor in silence. Marcus had only met Director James Morrison twice before, once at his promotion ceremony, once at a conference in D.C. Morrison was a career FBI man, 58 years old, white, from a long line of law enforcement. The kind of man who believed in the system because the system had always worked for him. Morrison's secretary waved them through. Inside the office, Morrison was standing by the window looking out over the city. He turned when they entered, his expression unreadable. "Agent Bennett, have a seat." Marcus sat. Sarah stood by the door, her coffee cup held in both hands like a shield. "I've watched the video," Morrison said, settling behind his desk. "Multiple times, and I've read the incident reports, yours, Agent Chen's, and Officer Chandler's." "Sir, about the footage being leaked." Morrison held up a hand. "We'll address that later. Right now, I want to hear from you. In your own words, what happened?" Marcus took a breath and told him. The surveillance operation, the detention, the handcuffs, the moment Chandler realized his mistake. He kept it factual, professional, just like Sarah had taught him. No emotion, no editorializing, just the facts. When he finished, Morrison leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "This is a difficult situation," Morrison said finally. "On one hand, what happened to you was clearly inappropriate. Officer Chandler acted on assumptions rather than evidence, and that's unacceptable. On the other hand, we have to be careful how we handle this publicly. The relationship between the FBI and local law enforcement is already strained. If we come down too hard on Chandler, we risk alienating departments across the country." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "With respect, sir, this isn't about politics. This is about an officer who violated my civil rights while I was conducting a federal investigation. I understand that, but we have to think about the bigger picture, the optics." "The optics?" Marcus couldn't keep the edge out of his voice now. "Sir, the optics are that a black FBI agent got handcuffed for reading a book in a park. The optics are already bad. The question is whether the Bureau is going to stand behind me or throw me under the bus to keep things comfortable with local PD. Sarah cleared her throat. "Director, if I may, the video is already out there. Social media has decided this is a story. We can either get ahead of it or spend the next 6 months playing defense." Morrison's jaw tightened. "I'm aware of that, Agent Mitchell, which is why we're holding a press conference this afternoon. Agent Bennett, you'll appear with me. We'll present a united front, condemn the officer's actions while emphasizing our commitment to working with law enforcement partners." "No, sir," Marcus said. The room went very quiet. "Excuse me." Morrison's voice was cold. "I said no, sir. I'm not doing a press conference. I'm not standing up there to be paraded around as proof that the Bureau cares about racial justice, while you're simultaneously telling me to consider the politics of holding a bad cop accountable. Agent Bennett, I'm not asking, then court-martial me, fire me, do whatever you need to do. But I'm not going to be your token black agent who smiles for the cameras and pretends everything is fine. It's not fine. And I'm done pretending it is." Sarah made a small noise, quickly covered. Morrison's face had gone red. "You're out of line, Agent." "Maybe, but I'm also right." Marcus stood up. "You want to know what the problem is, sir? The problem is that I've been an agent for 17 years. I've got 3 Purple Hearts from my time in Afghanistan. I've closed more cases than most agents close in a career. And none of that mattered when Officer Chandler looked at me yesterday. All he saw was my skin color. and all you see is a PR problem. That's not true. Isn't it? You just said we have to consider the optics. You said we can't come down too hard on Chandler because it might hurt our relationship with local PD. What about my relationship with the Bureau? What about every other agent of color who's watching this to see if the FBI will actually stand up for us, or if we're just convenient diversity statistics? Morrison stood up too, his hands flat on the desk. I have spent 35 years with this Bureau. I have fought for every agent under my command regardless of race, gender, or religion. Don't you dare question my commitment to equality. Then prove it, Marcus shot back. Don't make me do a press conference. Don't make me smile and play nice. File charges against Chandler, real charges. Let the system work the way it's supposed to. And if local PD doesn't like it, too bad. We're the FBI. We're supposed to be better. The silence stretched out thick and tense. Finally, Morrison sat back down. Get out, he said quietly. Both of you. I need to think. In the hallway, Sarah grabbed Marcus's arm. What the hell was that? The truth. The truth, Marcus. You just told the director of the FBI to go to hell. No, I told him to do his job. There's a difference. He could fire you for insubordination. Then he fires me. At least I'll be able to look at myself in the mirror. Sarah stared at him, then slowly shook her head. You're either the bravest person I know or the stupidest. I haven't decided which. Can it be both? Despite everything, Sarah smiled. Go home. Take the day off. I'll handle Morrison. Sarah? I said I'll handle it. You've done enough damage for one morning. Marcus left the building and drove home on autopilot. His phone was ringing constantly now. News stations, reporters, civil rights organizations, everyone wanted a statement. Everyone wanted his story. He turned the phone off. At home, he poured himself 2 fingers of bourbon, even though it was only 10 a.m., sat on his couch and stared at the wall, thought about his father who dealt with this same garbage for 40 years without the luxury of going viral, thought about his mother who still called him every night to make sure he'd made it home safe, thought about Jasmine who now had to see her father as vulnerable instead of invincible. The doorbell rang. Marcus ignored it. It rang again. Then a knock. Marcus, I know you're in there. I can hear the TV. Tommy. Marcus got up and opened the door. Tommy Chen was holding 2 bags of Chinese takeout and a 6-pack of beer. Figured you could use some company. Did Sarah send you? Nobody sends me anywhere. I'm a federal agent, remember? Tommy pushed past him into the apartment. Besides, you looked like you needed a friend more than a partner today. They ate in silence for a while, watching SportsCenter with the sound off. Finally, Tommy said, I'm the one who leaked the footage. Marcus set down his beer. I know. You're not mad? I should be, but no. You did what I was too scared to do. You're not scared of anything. That's not true. I'm scared all the time. Scared of being seen as angry. Scared of being seen as threatening. Scared of proving every stereotype right. So I stay calm. I stay professional. I make myself smaller so other people feel comfortable. Marcus laughed bitterly. And it doesn't matter. I still end up in handcuffs. Tommy was quiet for a moment. My parents came here from Taiwan in the 80s. They worked 16-hour days at a restaurant they didn't own, so I could go to college. And you know what my dad told me when I joined the Bureau? He said, good, now you're American enough that people will forget you're Chinese. Like that was the goal. Assimilation through law enforcement. Is that how you feel American enough? I don't know. Sometimes. Then something like this happens and I remember that there's a hierarchy. And no matter how good I am at my job, I'm still going to be seen as the Asian agent before I'm seen as just an agent. At least people don't cross the street when they see you coming. True, they just assume I'm good at math and can't drive. Marcus smiled despite himself. We're a mess, aren't we, the whole country? Yeah, but at least we're a mess together. They finished the beer and most of the Chinese food. Tommy left around 3 after extracting a promise from Marcus to answer his phone if Sarah called. Marcus agreed, knowing he probably wouldn't. But when his phone rang at 4:30, it wasn't Sarah. It was a number he didn't recognize. Georgia area code. Against his better judgment, he answered, "Bennett, Agent Bennett, this is Sergeant Rodriguez. We met yesterday at the park." Marcus sat up straighter. "Sergeant, what can I do for you?" "I wanted to let you know that Officer Chandler has been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. Internal Affairs is involved. So is the DA's office." "The DA? There's talk of criminal charges, false imprisonment, violation of civil rights. It depends on whether you want to press charges." Marcus closed his eyes. This was the moment, the choice that would define everything that came next. Press charges, and he became the agent who took down a cop. Didn't press charges, and he was the agent who let him get away with it. "I need to think about it," he said finally. "I understand. But Agent Bennett, for what it's worth, I think you should do it. Not for revenge, not for justice even, but because if you don't, Chandler will do this again, and next time the person sitting on that bench might not have a badge to protect them." She hung up before he could respond. Marcus sat there for a long time, phone in hand, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. All the times he'd been pulled over, all the times he'd been followed in stores, all the times he'd been asked if he really worked here, really lived here, really belonged here. All the times he'd smiled and explained and proved his right to exist in spaces that should have been open to everyone. He thought about Jasmine watching her father be treated like a criminal. He thought about his mother who'd lived through Jim Crow and thought things would be better by now. He thought about every young black kid who'd see that video and internalize the message that their life could be upended at any moment for no reason at all. And he made his decision. He called Sarah. "I'll do the press conference, but on my terms. No script, no talking points, just me telling my story. Take it or leave it." There was a pause. Then, "Morrison's not going to like that." "Morrison doesn't have to like it. He just has to let me do it." "I'll see what I can do." An hour later, Sarah called back. "You're on. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. Morrison's making a statement first, then turning it over to you. After that, you'll take questions from the press." And Chandler. "The Bureau's filing a formal complaint with Atlanta PD. Whether criminal charges follow is up to the DA and frankly up to you." Marcus took a breath. "Tell the DA I'll cooperate fully with any investigation. I want this on the record, all of it." "You sure about this? Once you start down this road, there's no going back." "I'm sure. I'm tired of going along to get along. I'm tired of making myself smaller. If this ends my career, so be it. At least I'll go out standing up." "Okay then," Sarah said, and he could hear the smile in her voice. "Let's make some trouble." The press conference was scheduled for 2 p.m., but Marcus arrived at the FBI building at noon. Sarah had arranged for a media consultant to prep him some woman named Patricia Valdez, who'd worked with everyone from senators to CEOs in crisis mode. Patricia was waiting in a conference room, her laptop open, a stack of note cards spread across the table. She looked up when Marcus entered, her expression all business. "Agent Bennett, I've watched the video about 50 times now. We need to talk about your messaging." "My messaging is the truth. The truth is a starting point, not a strategy." Patricia gestured to a chair. "Sit. We have 2 hours to make sure you don't accidentally tank your career and the Bureau's reputation in one press conference." Marcus sat, already regretting this. "What do you want me to say?" "I want you to be sympathetic, but not angry, rational, but not cold. You need to come across as the reasonable one, the professional who was wronged but isn't looking for revenge. Think dignified victim." "I'm not a victim." "You were handcuffed while sitting on a park bench. In the court of public opinion, you're absolutely a victim, and that's good for us. Victims get sympathy. Angry black men get—" She stopped herself. "Get what?" Marcus leaned forward. "Say it. Angry black men get dismissed, get called threatening, get told they're playing the race card." Patricia's expression didn't change. "I was going to say they get misunderstood, but yes, those things too, which is why we need to be strategic about how you present this." "I don't want to be strategic. I want to tell the truth." "The truth is great, but delivery matters. You go up there too hot, too aggressive, and half the country will decide you were the problem, not Chandler. You go up there too passive, too forgiving, and the other half will say you're a sellout who's letting cops get away with racism. There's a very narrow window where you can be authentic and effective at the same time. Marcus rubbed his face. This is exhausting. Welcome to being a public figure. Now let's talk about your opening statement. They spent the next 90 minutes going through every possible question, every potential landmine. Patricia was good at her job, Marcus had to admit. She anticipated angles he hadn't considered, prepared him for attacks he hadn't seen coming. "What if they ask why you didn't just show your badge immediately?" she asked. "Because he didn't give me a chance to reach for it." Good. Factual. No emotion. "What if they ask if you think all cops are racist?" "I don't think all cops are racist. I think the system has problems that good cops and bad cops both operate within." Better. But lose the word system. It sounds academic. Say there are problems in law enforcement that need to be addressed. More concrete. "This is ridiculous. I'm not a politician." "No, you're a black man in America who's about to face a room full of reporters looking for a story. Every word you say will be analyzed, clipped, taken out of context, and weaponized. So yes, you need to think like a politician, at least for the next hour." At 1:30, Sarah knocked on the door. "They're ready for you. Morrison's making his opening remarks now." Marcus stood, adjusted his tie, tried to ignore the way his hands wanted to shake. Patricia handed him a bottle of water. "Sip it if you need a second to think. Don't gulp it or you'll look nervous. And remember, you're the reasonable one. You're the professional. Let Chandler be the villain. You just have to be yourself." The press room was packed. Cameras everywhere, reporters jammed shoulder to shoulder, the air thick with anticipation. Marcus stepped through a side door and took his place behind the podium, Director Morrison to his left, Sarah to his right. Morrison was wrapping up his statement. "And so, while we respect the difficult job that law enforcement officers do every day, we cannot and will not tolerate racial profiling or the violation of civil rights, especially when directed at one of our own agents. Agent Bennett has my full support, and the Bureau will be cooperating fully with any investigation into this matter. I'll now turn this over to Agent Bennett, who will share his account of what happened." Morrison stepped back. Marcus stepped forward. The camera flashes were blinding. "Thank you, Director Morrison. My name is Special Agent Marcus Bennett. I've been with the FBI for 17 years. Before that, I served 3 tours in Afghanistan as a military liaison. I'm a father, a son, and a proud citizen of Atlanta, Georgia. And 2 days ago, I was handcuffed and detained while conducting a lawful surveillance operation in Piedmont Park." He paused, took a breath. Somewhere in the back of the room, a camera clicked. "I want to be very clear about what happened. I was sitting on a park bench reading a book as part of an ongoing investigation. I was dressed casually because I was undercover. I was doing my job, and I was approached by Officer Derek Chandler of the Atlanta Police Department, who demanded to see my identification. When I asked if I was being detained, Officer Chandler became aggressive. When I attempted to comply and reach for my credentials, he ordered me not to move. Then, he arrested me for failure to identify and obstruction of justice. I was handcuffed, placed in the back of a patrol car, and treated like a criminal. All of this was captured on video, which I'm sure most of you have seen." A reporter in the front row raised her hand. Marcus nodded. "Agent Bennett, do you believe Officer Chandler's actions were motivated by racial bias?" Marcus had practiced this answer a dozen times with Patricia. Now standing in front of the cameras, he threw the script away. "Yes, I do. Officer Chandler looked at me and saw a black man in casual clothes sitting in a park, and he decided I was a threat. He decided I was suspicious. Not because of anything I was doing, but because of what I looked like. That's racial profiling. And it's not just wrong, it's dangerous." Murmurs rippled through the room. Sarah shifted beside him, but didn't intervene. Another reporter. "What would you say to people who argue that Officer Chandler was just doing his job being cautious?" "I'd say there's a difference between being cautious and being prejudiced. A good cop approaches every situation with situational awareness. A bad cop approaches certain people with assumptions already made. Officer Chandler had decided I was a criminal before he even spoke to me. That's not caution. That's bias." "Agent Bennett, are you pressing charges?" Marcus hadn't planned to answer this yet. The DA's office wanted to coordinate messaging. But looking out at the sea of faces at the cameras broadcasting this across the country, he realized that hedging would only make things worse. Yes, I'm cooperating fully with the district attorney's investigation, and I will press charges if the DA determines they're warranted. Not because I want revenge, but because if we don't hold officers accountable for civil rights violations, we're telling them it's okay to keep doing it. And the next person Officer Chandler profiles might not have a badge to protect them. Do you think this incident represents a broader problem in law enforcement? I know it does. This isn't about one bad cop. This is about a system that allows racial profiling to happen without consequences. It's about the implicit biases we all carry and what we do when those biases lead to unjust actions. And it's about whether we as a society are willing to do the hard work of changing that system, or if we're just going to keep having the same conversation every time another video goes viral. A male reporter in the back. Agent Bennett, some people are saying you're being divisive, that you're anti-police. How do you respond to that? Marcus felt anger flash hot in his chest, but he kept his voice level. I've worked alongside police officers my entire career. I've relied on them to have my back in dangerous situations. I've attended funerals for officers killed in the line of duty. I'm not anti-police. I'm anti-racism. And if people can't tell the difference, that's part of the problem. What do you want to see happen as a result of this incident? I want real accountability. I want Officer Chandler to face consequences that match the severity of what he did. I want the Atlanta Police Department to examine its training and policies on racial bias. And I want other officers to watch this and understand that if they can do this to an FBI agent, they can do it to anyone. That should scare all of us. The questions kept coming. Marcus answered them all, feeling Patricia's careful coaching evaporate with each honest response. He wasn't the dignified victim. He wasn't the strategic messenger. He was just Marcus Bennett, tired and angry, and determined not to let this moment pass without saying what needed to be said. Finally, Sarah stepped forward. That's all the time we have. Thank you. The reporters shouted more questions as Marcus left the podium, but he didn't look back. In the hallway outside the press room, Morrison was waiting, his face unreadable. Well, Morrison said, that was certainly candid. I told you I wasn't going to read from a script, sir. You did. And against my better judgment, I let you do this your way. Morrison studied him for a long moment. I'm not sure if you just helped the Bureau or created a firestorm we'll be dealing with for months. But I'll say this, you were honest. And maybe that's what we need right now. Morrison walked away, leaving Marcus alone with Sarah. Patricia's going to kill you, Sarah said. You ignored every piece of advice she gave you. I know. You basically declared war on the Atlanta PD. I know. And you just made yourself the face of police reform, whether you wanted to be or not. I know. Marcus leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. Did I just end my career? Maybe. Or maybe you just started a new one. Sarah's phone buzzed. She looked at it and her eyebrows went up. The video of your press conference already has 2 million views. Twitter's on fire. Half the country loves you, half the country hates you. Sounds about right. The ACLU wants to talk to you, so does the NAACP, and about 30 different news shows want you for interviews. Tell them no. All of them. All of them. I said what I needed to say. Now let the process work. But the process wasn't interested in working quietly. By the time Marcus got home that evening, his phone had 500 new messages. His social media accounts, which he barely used, had been flooded with comments both supportive and vicious. Someone had found his address and posted it online along with his daughter's school. Marcus called Claire immediately. You need to pick up Jasmine from school yourself tomorrow. Don't let her take the bus and keep the doors locked. Marcus, what's going on? My address got doxed. I don't think anyone's going to show up, but I'm not taking chances. Not with Jazz. He could hear Claire's sharp intake of breath. This is getting out of control. I know. I'm sorry. I never wanted... I'm not blaming you, but Marcus, maybe you should back off a little. Let things cool down. I can't. If I back off now, it sends the message that speaking up isn't worth it, that the harassment works. And if something happens to you or to Jasmine, is that worth it? Marcus didn't have an answer for that. That night, Tommy showed up again, this time with a pizza and a serious expression. I'm staying here tonight. Don't argue. I don't need a bodyguard. You need a friend who's also armed and trained. Let me be that friend. They ate pizza and watched the news coverage of the press conference. CNN had legal analysts debating whether Marcus had a viable civil rights case. Fox News had a former police chief calling him divisive and anti-law enforcement. MSNBC had a civil rights attorney praising his courage. You've officially become a Rorschach test, Tommy observed. People see in you whatever they want to see. Lucky me. Marcus's phone rang. Unknown number again. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Agent Bennett, this is Derek Chandler. Marcus sat up straight, hitting the speaker button so Tommy could hear. Officer Chandler, I'm surprised to hear from you. I'm sure you are. Chandler's voice was tight, strained. I'm calling because my lawyer told me not to, which probably tells you everything you need to know about why I'm calling. I'm listening. I watched your press conference, all of it, and I've been thinking about what you said, about how if I could do this to an FBI agent, I could do it to anyone. Chandler paused. You're right, and that's what's been keeping me up at night. Marcus exchanged a glance with Tommy. Go on. I've been a cop for 15 years. I've made thousands of stops, written hundreds of tickets, arrested God knows how many people. And I always thought I was fair. I always thought I treated everyone the same. But watching that video, seeing myself through your eyes, through the eyes of everyone who's watched it, I realized something. I've been lying to myself. About what? About who I pull over, who I stop, who I question. I tell myself it's about crime statistics, about experience, about gut instinct. But the truth is, I do make assumptions based on race. I do treat black men differently than white men in the same situation. And I never saw it until I saw myself doing it to you. Marcus didn't know what to say. This wasn't what he'd expected. I'm not calling to ask you to drop the charges, Chandler continued. I'm not calling to make excuses. I'm calling because I owe you an apology. A real one. Not the PR version my lawyer wants me to give. You were doing your job and I violated your rights because of the color of your skin. That's the truth. And I'm sorry. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to hear it. And because I need to say it out loud to someone other than myself. I don't know if that means anything to you, but it's all I've got. Marcus thought about all the apologies he'd received over the years. The hollow ones, the defensive ones, the ones that came with a but attached. This one felt different. It felt like it cost something. It means something, Marcus said quietly. It doesn't fix what happened, and it doesn't mean there shouldn't be consequences. But it means something. I know. And for what it's worth, I'm going to cooperate fully with the investigation. I'm going to tell the truth about what I did and why I did it. Maybe that'll help someone else see what I couldn't see until it was too late. After Chandler hung up, Tommy let out a low whistle. Did that just happen? I think so. What are you going to do? Nothing different. He still violated my rights. He still needs to be held accountable. But maybe if he's serious about changing, something good can come from this after all. The next morning, Marcus got a call from the district attorney, a sharp woman named Jennifer Okafor, who'd built her career on civil rights cases. Agent Bennett, I've reviewed all the evidence in your case. The video, the witness statements, Officer Chandler's own body cam footage. We have more than enough to file charges. The question is what charges and how hard we push. What are my options? We can go for false imprisonment, deprivation of rights under color of law, possibly assault, if we argue the handcuffs caused injury. Or we can accept a plea deal where Chandler admits wrongdoing, accepts a suspension without pay, and undergoes extensive retraining. What do you recommend? Honestly, I recommend we file the serious charges and let Chandler's lawyer come to us with a plea. We have leverage here. Let's use it to make sure this sticks. Do it. You're sure this is going to get ugly. Chandler's union will fight back. They'll try to discredit you, dig into your past, make this about anything other than what Chandler did. Let them try. I've got nothing to hide. But 3 days later, Marcus learned that wasn't entirely true. A conservative news outlet ran a story about a complaint filed against him 5 years earlier by a suspect who claimed Marcus had used excessive force during an arrest. The complaint had been investigated and dismissed, but that didn't stop the story from spreading. FBI agent who cried racism has own history of violence, the headline read. Marcus stared at his laptop screen, feeling sick. He remembered that arrest. A domestic violence call the suspect high on meth, reaching for what looked like a weapon. Marcus had tackled him, used the force necessary to restrain him safely. The investigation had cleared him completely. But now, it was being twisted, weaponized, used to paint him as a hypocrite. Sarah called within the hour. Have you seen it? Yeah. We're putting out a statement clarifying the facts. The complaint was baseless. The investigation cleared you completely. It doesn't matter. The damage is done. Now everyone who wants to dismiss what happened to me has ammunition. Marcus, this is what they do. They can't defend Chandler's actions, so they attack your credibility instead. You knew this was coming. Knowing it's coming and living through it are two different things. That night, Jasmine called him crying. Dad, there's stuff online about you. People are saying you're violent, that you hurt people. Jazz, those stories aren't true. There was an incident years ago, but I was cleared of any wrongdoing. But why are people saying it? Why are they trying to make you look bad? Because the truth is uncomfortable for them. It's easier to attack me than to admit that what Officer Chandler did was wrong. I hate this. I hate that they're lying about you. I know, baby. I hate it too. But we don't get to control what other people say. We only get to control how we respond. And we respond by telling the truth and trusting that the truth matters. Does it matter? I mean... Marcus closed his eyes, thinking about all the lies he'd seen triumph over truth, all the injustices that never got corrected. I have to believe it does. Otherwise, what's the point of fighting? But his faith in truth was tested 2 days later when the Atlanta Police Union held their own press conference. The union president, a bulky man named Frank Kowalski, stood at a podium flanked by a dozen officers in uniform. The Atlanta Police Union stands behind Officer Derek Chandler, Kowalski announced. While we acknowledge that this incident was unfortunate, we believe Officer Chandler acted in accordance with his training and his duty to protect public safety. The rush to judgment against him, led by Agent Bennett and amplified by the media, represents a dangerous trend of second-guessing police officers who make split-second decisions in challenging situations. Marcus watched the press conference on his phone, his jaw clenched. Kowalski continued, "We also find it troubling that Agent Bennett, who himself has been accused of excessive force, is being held up as a victim, while Officer Chandler, a decorated 15-year veteran with an exemplary record, is being vilified. This isn't about justice. This is about an agenda." A reporter asked, "What agenda are you referring to?" "The anti-police agenda that's been growing in this country. The idea that every interaction between police and minorities is evidence of systemic racism. It's not. Sometimes people get stopped because they match a description. Sometimes they get questioned because they're acting suspiciously. Race isn't always the factor, no matter how much some people want it to be." Tommy, who was watching with Marcus, threw a pillow at the TV. "This is garbage, complete garbage." "It's strategy," Marcus said quietly. "They can't win on facts, so they're changing the narrative, making this about anti-police bias instead of racial profiling. Are you going to respond? No, let them talk. The evidence speaks for itself." But that evening, his mother called, her voice shaking with anger. "Marcus, I just watched that horrible man on television defending what that officer did to you. Tell me you're not going to let them get away with this." "Mama, the DA is handling it. There's going to be a trial. The truth will come out." "The truth," his mother repeated, her voice bitter. "Baby, I've lived 68 years, and I've seen the truth lose more times than I can count. You think a trial is going to fix this. You think justice is guaranteed just because you're right. What else can I do? Fight. Fight harder than you've ever fought. Because if you don't, that officer walks away, and the next black man he stops might not be as lucky as you were." Marcus thought about that conversation for hours after she hung up. His mother was right. Justice wasn't automatic. It had to be fought for, demanded, dragged into the light even when everyone wanted to keep it hidden. The next morning, Marcus called Jennifer Okafor. "I want to file a civil suit against Chandler and the Atlanta Police Department." "That's a big step. It'll be expensive, time-consuming, and the odds of winning against a police department are not great." "I don't care. I want this on the record. I want Discovery to force them to reveal their training materials, their policies, their past complaints. I want this to be about more than just one incident." "Okay. But Marcus, you should know this will consume your life for the next year, maybe longer. Every detail of that day will be examined. Every detail of your life will be examined. They'll make you prove over and over that you're the victim. Are you ready for that?" Marcus thought about Jasmine, about his mother, about every person who'd ever been profiled and didn't have the resources to fight back. "Yeah," he said. "I'm ready." The civil suit was filed on a Thursday morning in late March. By Thursday afternoon, Marcus's face was on every news channel again this time, with a new caption: "FBI agent sues Atlanta police for $10 million. Marcus hadn't wanted to attach a dollar figure to the suit. Jennifer had insisted. "Juries understand money," she'd explained. "They don't understand abstract concepts like dignity or civil rights violations, but they understand $10 million. It makes them pay attention." Now, sitting in his apartment watching the coverage, Marcus wondered if the attention was worth it. The comments section on every article was a war zone. Half the people called him a hero. The other half called him a race-baiting opportunist trying to get rich off a simple misunderstanding. His phone rang. Claire. $10 million, Marcus, really? It's not about the money. It never is until suddenly it is. Do you know what Jasmine's classmates are saying? That her dad's trying to cash in on being black? That you're using your race to shake down the police department? Marcus felt his chest tighten. That's not what this is. I know that, you know that, but you're making this harder for her, for us. Every time your face shows up on TV, every time there's another article she has to deal with the fallout at school. What do you want me to do? Drop the suit? Pretend it never happened? I want you to think about your daughter before you think about making a point. That's all I've ever wanted. She hung up before he could respond. Marcus sat there, phone in hand, feeling the weight of everyone's expectations crushing down on him. Be strong but not angry. Stand up but don't make waves. Fight for justice but don't inconvenience anyone. Tommy showed up an hour later with sandwiches from the deli down the street. He took one look at Marcus's face and said, "Claire called." "How'd you know?" "Because you've got that look. The one you get when someone you love tells you you're doing everything wrong." Marcus unwrapped his sandwich without much interest. "Maybe I am." "Doing everything wrong? Or maybe Claire's scared. Maybe she's seeing her daughter struggle and blaming you because that's easier than blaming a system that lets cops profile people for breathing while black. She's not wrong, though. Jazz is suffering because of my choices. Jazz is suffering because Derek Chandler decided to arrest you for reading a book. You didn't start this, Marcus. He did. All you're doing is refusing to pretend it didn't happen." Before Marcus could respond, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You should drop the suit, for your family's sake." Then another, "You're destroying a good cop's life over nothing." Then another, "We know where you live. We know where your daughter goes to school." Marcus showed the messages to Tommy, who immediately went into agent mode. "Forward these to me. I'm filing a report. This is witness intimidation, at minimum possibly criminal threatening." "They're just trolls trying to scare me." "Maybe, but we don't take chances, not with threats involving Jasmine." The threats kept coming over the next few days. Most were anonymous, untraceable. A few were bold enough to come from real accounts, people with profile pictures and jobs, and families who thought it was acceptable to threaten a federal agent and his child because they disagreed with a lawsuit. The FBI's cybercrime unit got involved. They traced 3 of the threats back to their sources. One was a retired police officer from Alabama. Another was a current officer in Texas. The third was a 19-year-old college student in Florida who claimed he was just joking. Sarah called Marcus into her office on Monday. "We're providing you with protection, 2 agents rotating shifts. They'll be outside your apartment and following Jasmine to and from school." "That's not necessary." "It's not optional. We've identified credible threats. Until we neutralize them, you're under bureau protection." "For how long?" "As long as it takes." Marcus hated it. Hated the constant presence of agents outside his door. Hated the way Jasmine went quiet when she noticed the unmarked car following her bus. But he understood it was necessary. The lawsuit had made him a symbol, and symbols attracted both devotion and rage. The deposition was scheduled for April 15th. Marcus spent the week before with Jennifer going over every detail of that morning in the park. She drilled him relentlessly, playing devil's advocate, asking every hostile question Chandler's lawyers would ask. "Why were you dressed like a homeless person if you're really an FBI agent?" "I was undercover conducting surveillance. Blending in was essential to the operation." "But you had no identification visible. How was Officer Chandler supposed to know you were law enforcement?" "He wasn't supposed to know. That's what undercover means. But he also had no probable cause to detain me. I wasn't committing a crime. I was sitting on a bench reading a book." He says you matched the description of a robbery suspect. The description was vague to the point of uselessness. Black male 40s, dark clothing. That could describe thousands of men in Atlanta on any given day. If that's enough for probable cause, then every black man is permanently subject to being detained. Jennifer nodded, making notes. "Good. Stay calm like that. Don't let them bait you into anger." "What if I am angry?" "Then be angry on your own time. In that deposition room, you're a federal agent calmly recounting the facts, nothing more." The deposition took place in a downtown law office, all glass and steel and expensive furniture. Chandler's lawyer was a man named Robert Brennan, 60 years old, white hair, the kind of face that looked trustworthy even when it was lying. Brennan started gentle. Questions about Marcus's background, his education, his career with the FBI, establishing the record. Then he shifted. "Agent Bennett, you testified earlier that you've worked with local law enforcement throughout your career. Is that correct?" "Yes." "And in your experience, would you say that most police officers are professional and fair?" Marcus saw the trap but couldn't avoid it. "In my experience, most officers try to do their jobs professionally, but they operate within a system that has significant problems." "Yes or no, Agent Bennett, are most officers professional and fair?" "It's not a yes or no question. I'll rephrase. In your 17 years as an FBI agent, have you encountered more professional officers or unprofessional officers?" "More professional." "So most officers are good at their jobs." "Most officers are competent at the technical aspects of their jobs. That doesn't mean they don't carry biases that affect how they do those jobs." Brennan smiled like he'd scored a point. "But you acknowledge that most officers are trying to do the right thing." "I acknowledge that intent and impact aren't the same thing. An officer can believe he's doing the right thing while still engaging in racial profiling." "Is that what you think happened here? Officer Chandler believed he was doing the right thing?" "I think Officer Chandler made assumptions based on my race and acted on those assumptions without proper justification. Whether he believed he was right is irrelevant to whether his actions were constitutional." Brennan pulled out a folder. "Let's talk about your complaint history, Agent Bennett. You've been accused of excessive force." Jennifer immediately objected. "That complaint was investigated and dismissed. It's not relevant to this case. It's relevant to Agent Bennett's credibility. If he's willing to use excessive force himself, how can we trust his account of feeling threatened by Officer Chandler?" "I never said I felt threatened," Marcus interrupted. "I said my civil rights were violated. Those are different things." "But you were afraid, weren't you, when Officer Chandler approached you?" Marcus thought carefully before answering. "I was aware of the danger of the situation. I'm a black man in America. Any interaction with police carries the potential for escalation regardless of whether I've done anything wrong. So yes, I was cautious. But I wasn't afraid for my safety until Officer Chandler put his hand on his gun." "He put his hand on his gun because you were being uncooperative. I was asking legal questions about the basis for the stop. That's not being uncooperative. That's exercising my constitutional rights." Rights that you as an FBI agent know better than the average citizen. Yes, which is exactly why I tried to comply carefully. I know how these situations can go wrong. I've investigated officer-involved shootings. I've seen what happens when cops feel threatened, even when there's no actual threat. So I kept my hands visible. I moved slowly. I stayed calm. I did everything right, and I still ended up in handcuffs. Brennan shuffled his papers, and Marcus knew he'd landed that point. But the lawyer recovered quickly. Let's talk about the surveillance operation you claim to have been conducting. Who authorized it? Assistant Director Sarah Mitchell. And can you provide documentation of that authorization? Jennifer cut in. The details of ongoing FBI operations are classified. Agent Bennett can confirm the operation existed without compromising operational security. Convenient, Brennan said. So we're supposed to take Agent Bennett's word that he was working and not just sitting in a park looking suspicious. Looking suspicious isn't a crime, Marcus said, his voice harder now. And even if it were, Officer Chandler didn't ask about surveillance. He didn't ask what I was doing there. He made a judgment based on how I looked and acted on it. That's the definition of profiling. The deposition went on for 4 more hours. By the end, Marcus's jaw ached from clenching it, and his temples throbbed with a headache that no amount of water could touch. In the elevator down, Jennifer touched his arm. You did well. He tried to shake you, and you didn't break. Didn't feel like I did well. That's because you're emotionally invested. But trust me, you came across as credible, calm, and professional. Exactly what we need. Outside, the April sun was setting, painting the sky orange and purple. Marcus's protection detail fell in behind him as he walked to his car. He'd gotten used to their presence the way you get used to a low-grade headache that never quite goes away. His phone rang as he was driving home. Jasmine. Dad, can you pick me up from Brittany's house? Mom's working late. Sure, baby. Text me the address. 20 minutes later, he pulled up to a nice house in Buckhead, the kind of neighborhood where the lawns were perfect and the houses all looked like they belonged in magazines. Jasmine came out looking tired, her backpack slung over one shoulder. How was the study session? Marcus asked as she buckled in. Fine. Just fine. Jasmine stared out the window. Brittany's mom asked me about the lawsuit. She wanted to know if we were really going to get $10 million. Marcus's hands tightened on the wheel. What did you tell her? I told her I didn't want to talk about it. Then she said she hoped we won because what happened to you was terrible. But the way she said it, Dad, it was like she was talking about a tragedy that happened to someone else, like we were victims she could feel sorry for from a safe distance. People don't always know how to talk about these things. I know. But it's exhausting. Being the black girl whose dad got arrested, having everyone look at me with pity or suspicion or curiosity. I just want to be normal, you know, just Jazz. Not that girl whose dad is suing the police. Marcus pulled over into a parking lot, turned to face his daughter. I'm sorry this has affected your life. But Jazz, there's something you need to understand. Normal for us, for people who look like us, means accepting things that shouldn't be acceptable. It means staying quiet when we should speak up. I can't do that anymore, and I hope someday you'll understand why. I do understand, Jasmine said, and there were tears in her eyes now. I understand that you're doing the right thing, but I'm 13, Dad. I don't want to be part of a movement. I just want to do my homework and hang out with my friends and not have to think about racism every single day. I know, baby. I know. They sat there for a long moment, the car idling the protection detail's sedan, waiting patiently behind them. Finally, Jasmine wiped her eyes and said, Can we get ice cream? Absolutely. They went to the place they'd been going since she was 5, the family-owned shop that made everything from scratch. The owner, an elderly Italian man named Giuseppe, greeted them with a huge smile. Marcus and little Jasmine, not so little anymore. I saw you on the TV. That cop, he should be ashamed. Thanks, Giuseppe. No thanks needed. What happened to you, it's not right. My father, he came here from Italy in 1952. You know what they called him? WAP, Guinea. They treated him like he was dirty, like he didn't belong, but he worked hard and eventually people saw him for who he was. But you, Marcus, you're already successful. You're already proving yourself every day, and still they treat you this way. It's shameful. Giuseppe gave them extra scoops, refused to let Marcus pay. They sat outside eating their ice cream in the warm evening air, and for a few minutes, things felt almost normal. But normal didn't last. The next morning, Marcus got a call from Sarah. "We have a problem. Someone leaked Chandler's deposition." "How is that a problem for us?" "Because he's playing the sympathy card, says he's been getting death threats, says his marriage is falling apart, says he can't sleep at night because of the stress. He's painting himself as the real victim here." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Of course he is. There's more. He's filed a countersuit against you for defamation and emotional distress." "On what grounds?" "He claims your press conference and your lawsuit have damaged his reputation and mental health. He's asking for $5 million. Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. "So now I'm being sued for having the audacity to hold him accountable. That's rich." "Jennifer says it's a nuisance suit that it'll get thrown out, but it complicates things, and it gives Chandler's supporters something to rally around." "Let them rally. I'm not backing down." But the countersuit did what it was designed to do. It shifted the narrative again. Now it wasn't just about Marcus being wronged. It was about two men locked in a legal battle, both claiming to be victims, both asking juries to decide who was telling the truth. The media ate it up. Cable news showed split screens of Marcus and Chandler debating which man had suffered more. Online arguments raged about whether Marcus was a hero or a hustler, whether Chandler was a racist or a scapegoat. And through it all, Marcus just kept going. Went to work, did his job, investigated cases, came home to an empty apartment and tried not to think about how much simpler life had been before he'd decided to sit in a park with a book. Tommy came by most nights, sometimes with food, sometimes just to sit and watch sports and not talk about the lawsuit. On one of those nights, Marcus asked him something he'd been wondering. "Do you think I'm doing the right thing, or am I just being stubborn?" Tommy considered the question seriously. "I think you're doing the necessary thing, which isn't always the same as the right thing, but it's what needs to be done." "That's a politician's answer." "Fine. You want the truth?" "I think you're scared that if you back down now, everything you've endured will have been for nothing. I think you're carrying the weight of every black person who's ever been profiled and couldn't fight back. And I think that's too much for one person to carry, but you're doing it anyway because you're too stubborn to quit." "You make me sound like a martyr." "You're not a martyr. You're just a man who got tired of accepting the unacceptable. There's nothing noble about it. It's just human." A week before the criminal trial was set to begin, Derek Chandler requested a meeting. Just him and Marcus, no lawyers, no cameras. Jennifer advised against it. "Anything he says could be used against us, and anything you say could help his defense." "I don't care. I want to hear what he has to say." They met in a coffee shop in Virginia Highland Neutral Territory. Chandler was already there when Marcus arrived, sitting in a corner booth, looking like he'd aged 10 years in the past 2 months. "Thank you for coming," Chandler said as Marcus sat down. "I haven't decided if this was a mistake yet." Chandler smiled weakly. "Fair enough." He pushed a cup of coffee across the table. "I remembered you took it black from that morning." Marcus didn't touch the coffee. "What do you want, Chandler?" "I want to tell you something I couldn't say with my lawyer in the room. I want to tell you that I've been going to therapy. Court-ordered at first, but now I go on my own. And my therapist asked me to make a list of every time I've made an assumption about someone based on their race. Every traffic stop, every ID check, every time I followed someone in a store when I was off duty. And the list was 43 pages long, 43 pages of moments where I looked at someone who looked like you and decided they were suspicious, decided they didn't belong, decided I needed to investigate." Chandler's hands were shaking slightly. "I've been a cop for 15 years, and I've been racist for 15 years. I just didn't see it because I'm not the Klan. I don't use slurs. I don't burn crosses. I just make assumptions and act on them and ruin people's days, or worse." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you deserve to know that you were right." About me, about the system, about all of it. And because I'm dropping the countersuit, it was my lawyer's idea, not mine. I don't want your money. I don't want to fight you anymore. I just want to accept responsibility for what I did and try to be better. Marcus studied Chandler's face, looking for deception for strategy, but all he saw was exhaustion and something that might have been genuine remorse. What do you want from me in return? Nothing. I'm still going to plead guilty at trial. I'm still going to accept whatever punishment the judge decides. This isn't about making a deal. This is just me trying to do one thing right after doing so many things wrong. Marcus finally picked up the coffee, took a sip. It was cold. You know your union's going to be furious. I don't care about the union anymore. They wanted me to keep fighting to make you the villain to protect the thin blue line. But the line isn't worth protecting if it's drawn on top of injustice. Chandler leaned forward. I can't undo what I did to you. I can't give you back the dignity I took, but I can stop making it worse. That's all I've got. They sat in silence for a long moment. Then Marcus said, I'm not dropping the civil suit. I know. You shouldn't. The department needs to be held accountable, not just me. And I'm not going to tell the media we're friends now, or that I forgive you. I don't expect you to. Forgiveness is earned, and I haven't earned it. Marcus finished the cold coffee, stood up. For what it's worth, Chandler, I hope your therapy works. I hope you do become a better person. But that doesn't change what you did, or what needs to happen next. I understand. Marcus walked out of the coffee shop into the bright afternoon sun. The protection detail was waiting as always. He got in his car and sat there for a moment trying to process what had just happened. His phone buzzed. Jennifer. Well, what did he want? Marcus typed back, to confess, and to drop his countersuit. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, holy shit, this changes everything. But it didn't change everything. It changed one thing. The criminal trial would be shorter now, less contentious. Chandler would plead guilty, accept responsibility, face consequences. That was something. But it wasn't everything. The system that had allowed Chandler to profile him was still in place. The biases that had led to that moment in the park were still being carried by thousands of other officers across the country. The next Marcus Bennett was probably getting stopped right now somewhere for the crime of existing while black. One confession didn't fix that. One guilty plea didn't reform a system. But maybe Marcus thought it was a start. A crack in the foundation that could, with enough pressure, become a breaking point. He started the car and drove home, the protection detail following behind, the weight of everything still pressing down, but somehow for the first time in months, feeling just slightly more bearable. The criminal trial lasted 3 days, but it felt like 3 years. Marcus sat in the courtroom every day watching Derek Chandler plead guilty to deprivation of rights under color of law. Watched him stand before Judge Patricia Morehouse, a black woman in her 60s who'd been on the bench for 20 years, and admit what he'd done. I racially profiled Agent Bennett, Chandler said, his voice steady but quiet. I made assumptions based on the color of his skin and acted on those assumptions without proper justification. I violated his constitutional rights and abused my authority as a police officer. I take full responsibility for my actions. The courtroom was packed. Media in the back rows, civil rights activists on one side, off-duty cops on the other. Marcus's mother sat directly behind him, her hand occasionally reaching forward to squeeze his shoulder. Jasmine had wanted to come, but Marcus had said no. She'd seen enough. Judge Morehouse looked down at Chandler, her expression unreadable. Officer Chandler, I've read the psychological evaluation ordered by this court. I've read the statements from your therapist. I've reviewed your service record, and I've watched the video of your encounter with Agent Bennett approximately 200 times. She paused, letting the weight of those words settle over the room. What I saw in that video was not an anomaly. It was not a mistake. It was the predictable result of a system that trains officers to see certain people as inherently suspicious. You are not the disease, Officer Chandler. You are a symptom, but that does not absolve you of responsibility for your choices. Chandler stood ramrod straight, taking it without flinching. However, the judge continued, I also see something in your guilty plea and your subsequent actions that gives me a small measure of hope. You have done something that far too many officers refuse to do. You have acknowledged your bias and committed to changing. That matters. Not enough to excuse what you did, but enough to inform my sentencing." Marcus felt his mother's hand tighten on his shoulder. "Derek Chandler, I hereby sentence you to 18 months in prison, suspended with 3 years of supervised probation. During that probation, you will complete 500 hours of community service, specifically working with organizations that address racial bias in policing. You will continue therapy, and you will speak publicly about your experience, not to excuse your actions, but to help other officers recognize and confront their own biases." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Some people looked satisfied, others looked angry. Marcus felt numb. Additionally, Judge Morehouse said, "You are permanently barred from serving as a law enforcement officer in any capacity anywhere in the United States. You will surrender your certification within 30 days. Chandler's shoulders sagged slightly, but he nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." "Agent Bennett, would you like to make a victim impact statement?" Marcus hadn't prepared one. Jennifer had encouraged him to, but he'd refused. What was there to say that hadn't already been said? But now, standing in this courtroom, feeling the weight of everyone's eyes on him, he found words coming. "Your Honor, may I approach?" "You may." Marcus walked to the front of the courtroom, stood at the podium, looked out at the sea of faces. Then he looked at Chandler, who met his gaze without looking away. "I'm not going to talk about what Officer Chandler did to me. That's in the record. Everyone here has seen the video. What I want to talk about is what happens next. Because this trial, this sentence, this moment, it's not the end of anything. It's barely the beginning." He turned slightly to address the whole room. There are thousands of Derek Chandlers out there, officers who aren't bad people, but who carry biases they don't even recognize, who make assumptions, who see skin color before they see humanity. And there are millions of people like me who live every day knowing that a routine interaction with police could turn dangerous in seconds, not because of anything we've done, but because of what we look like. Marcus's voice grew stronger. Officer Chandler's guilty plea doesn't fix that. My lawsuit against the Atlanta Police Department doesn't fix that. This sentence doesn't fix that. The only thing that fixes it is if we all of us decide that it's not acceptable anymore, that we're going to demand better from our police departments, from our politicians, from ourselves. He looked back at the judge. "I don't forgive Officer Chandler. I'm not there yet, and I may never be. But I acknowledge that he's trying to do something difficult. He's trying to change. And if one officer can do that, maybe others can too. Maybe that's the real justice here. Not punishment, but transformation." Marcus returned to his seat. His mother was crying quietly, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. The judge thanked him and dismissed the court. Outside on the courthouse steps, reporters swarmed. Marcus had prepared a brief statement with Jennifer, but when the cameras turned on and the microphones thrust forward, he found himself speaking from the heart instead. "Today, Derek Chandler was held accountable for violating my civil rights. I'm grateful for that accountability, but I want to be clear this isn't a victory. This is one small step in a very long journey toward justice. My civil suit against the Atlanta Police Department continues. That suit isn't about money. It's about forcing systemic change. It's about making sure that what happened to me doesn't keep happening to others." A reporter shouted, "Agent Bennett, do you think Officer Chandler's sentence was fair?" Marcus considered the question. "I think Judge Morehouse understood something important. Sending Chandler to prison doesn't teach anyone anything except that there are consequences after you get caught. Making him work in the community, making him speak publicly about his biases, making him part of the solution instead of just removing him from the problem that has the potential to create real change. Whether it will or not, we'll have to wait and see." "What about the civil suit? What do you hope to achieve?" "I hope to achieve transparency. I want to see the Atlanta PD's training materials on racial bias. I want to see their complaint records. I want to know how many other officers have profiled citizens and faced no consequences. And I want policy changes that make it harder for this to happen again." Tommy appeared at his elbow, gently steering him away from the microphones. "That's all for today, folks. Thank you." In the car, Marcus's mother said, "Your father would have been proud of you today." "Would he? I'm not sure I said the right things." "You said true things. That's all your father ever asked of anyone." She patted his hand. "You look exhausted, baby. When's the last time you slept a full night?" Marcus couldn't remember. The past 3 months had been a blur of depositions, media appearances, threats, and sleepless nights replaying that morning in the park over and over in his head. "I'll sleep when this is over." "This is never going to be over, Marcus. Not completely. You need to find a way to live with it, not just survive it." She was right, as mothers usually are. But Marcus didn't know how to live with it. Didn't know how to wake up every morning and put on the same skin that had made him a target and go out into a world that might see him as a threat before it saw him as a person. The civil trial began 6 weeks later. This one would be longer, messier, more expensive. The Atlanta Police Department had hired a team of lawyers who spent the first week trying to get the case dismissed on various technicalities. Judge Morehouse, who was also presiding over the civil case, denied every motion. "This case has merit," she said firmly. "We're going to trial." The discovery process revealed what Marcus had suspected. Over the past 5 years, the Atlanta PD had received 217 complaints of racial profiling. Of those, only 12 had resulted in any disciplinary action. The rest were dismissed as unfounded or unsubstantiated. Jennifer highlighted this in her opening statement. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is not about one bad officer having a bad day. This is about a department that has created a culture where racial profiling is tolerated, where complaints are ignored, and where officers like Derek Chandler can violate citizens' rights without consequence. Agent Bennett isn't suing because he wants money. He's suing because he wants change. And the only way to force that change is through this courtroom." The defense attorney, a sharp woman named Catherine Walsh, countered with a different narrative. "Agent Bennett is a decorated FBI agent. He knows the law, he knows police procedures, and he knew exactly what to do to make Officer Chandler's job difficult that day. He refused to cooperate. He refused to identify himself. He created a confrontational situation and then claimed victimhood when it went the way he orchestrated. This isn't about racial profiling. This is about a citizen who happens to be a federal agent refusing to comply with a lawful police order." Marcus had to sit through days of this, had to watch his character, dissected his motives, questioned his pain, minimized. The defense called witnesses who testified about the high crime rate in that area of the park, about the robbery that had happened the night before, about how reasonable it was for Officer Chandler to be suspicious. They called a retired police chief who testified about the split-second decisions officers had to make about the danger they faced every day, about how easy it was to Monday morning quarterback when you weren't the one on the street. But Jennifer was ready for all of it. She called witnesses, too. A black businessman who'd been stopped by Atlanta PD 11 times in 2 years, despite never being charged with anything. A Latina teenager who'd been handcuffed for matching the description of a shoplifter 3 times in 1 month. An Asian American doctor who'd been pulled over for driving suspiciously in his own neighborhood. Pattern after pattern, story after story, a tapestry of racial profiling that the defense couldn't explain away. Then Jennifer called Marcus to the stand. "Agent Bennett, can you describe your emotional state when Officer Chandler approached you that morning?" Marcus thought back to that moment. "I was calm. I was doing my job, but I was also immediately aware that this interaction had the potential to go wrong very quickly." "Why?" "Because I'm a black man in America. I've been profiled before. I've been stopped before. I know what it looks like when an officer has already decided you're guilty of something." "And you saw that in Officer Chandler." "Objection," Walsh said, "calls for speculation." "I'll rephrase," Jennifer said smoothly. "What did you observe about Officer Chandler's demeanor and behavior?" He approached with his hand near his weapon. His body language was aggressive. His questions weren't investigative, they were accusatory. He'd already made up his mind about who I was before I opened my mouth. "And how did that make you feel?" Marcus paused, choosing his words carefully. It made me feel like I was being judged for existing. Like, no matter what I said, no matter how I complied, it wasn't going to matter, because he wasn't seeing Special Agent Marcus Bennett. He was seeing a black man who didn't belong. The cross-examination was brutal. Walsh went after every detail, every choice Marcus had made. You could have immediately identified yourself as FBI, couldn't you? I tried to. He told me not to move. But you could have shouted it. I'm FBI. Problem solved, right? It shouldn't have been necessary. I wasn't committing a crime. Officer Chandler had no probable cause to detain me. He had a description of a suspect. You matched that description. I matched a description so vague that it could have applied to thousands of men. That's not probable cause. That's fishing. Walsh smiled like she'd been waiting for that. Fishing. Interesting choice of words. Is that what you think police work is? Fishing. I think good police work is based on evidence and observation, not assumptions and stereotypes. And you're an expert on police work. I've worked with police departments across the country for 17 years. I've seen good policing and bad policing. What Officer Chandler did that day was bad policing. The trial went on for 3 weeks. Expert witnesses testified about implicit bias. Police chiefs testified about proper procedures. Psychologists testified about the trauma of racial profiling. Economists testified about the financial impact of discriminatory policing on communities of color. And through it all, Marcus sat at the plaintiff's table watching his life being dissected and debated, wondering if any of it would actually matter in the end. The jury deliberated for 2 days. When they came back, Marcus's hands were shaking so badly he had to grip the edge of the table to keep them still. The foreperson stood. On the count of violation of civil rights, we find in favor of the plaintiff, Agent Marcus Bennett. Marcus felt his mother grab his hand. On the count of negligent training and supervision, we find in favor of the plaintiff. Jennifer squeezed his other hand. On the count of municipal liability, we find in favor of the plaintiff. The courtroom erupted. Judge Morehouse banged her gavel for order. As to damages, the foreperson continued, we award the plaintiff compensatory damages in the amount of $200,000 and punitive damages against the Atlanta Police Department in the amount of $8 million. Marcus couldn't process the numbers. $8 million. It felt surreal. But Jennifer was whispering in his ear, the punitive damages are what matter. That's the court telling the department they need to change. Judge Morehouse waited for the noise to die down. I want to add something to the jury's verdict. The Atlanta Police Department is hereby ordered to implement the following reforms within 6 months mandatory bias training for all officers, an independent review board for profiling complaints, and quarterly public reporting of stop and search demographics. Failure to comply will result in additional penalties. It was over. After 6 months of fighting, it was finally over. Outside, the press was waiting again. This time, Marcus was ready. Today's verdict isn't about me getting paid. Most of this money is going to organizations that work on police reform and racial justice. Today's verdict is about accountability. It's about a jury of 12 people saying that what happened to me was wrong, that it represents a pattern of behavior, and that it needs to stop. Agent Bennett, what do you want people to take away from this case? Marcus thought about that question. Thought about Jasmine watching from home. Thought about his mother standing beside him. Thought about every person who'd shared their own story of being profiled, being stopped, being made to feel like they didn't belong in their own country. I want people to understand that this isn't just about police and black people. This is about the kind of country we want to be. Do we want to be a country where your rights depend on the color of your skin, where some people get the benefit of the doubt and others get handcuffs? Or do we want to be a country where everyone is treated with dignity and respect regardless of what they look like? And do you think this verdict moves us toward that goal? I think it's one step in a journey that's going to take generations. But it's a step, and sometimes that's all you can ask for. 3 months later, Marcus was back in Piedmont Park. Same bench, same book, but everything felt different. Jasmine sat next to him doing homework. She'd asked to come, said she wanted to see the place where it all started. Marcus had been hesitant, but Claire had encouraged it. She needs to reclaim that space, Claire had said. So do you. So here they were on a Saturday afternoon, just a father and daughter enjoying a nice day. People walked by, some recognizing Marcus and nodding respectfully. One woman stopped to thank him. One man stopped to tell him he was making things worse. Marcus accepted both with equal grace. "Dad," Jasmine said, looking up from her math homework, "Ms. Rodriguez asked me to do a presentation about your case for history class. She said it's an important example of civil rights in action." "What did you tell her?" "I said I'd think about it. I wanted to ask you first." Marcus closed his book. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to do it, to tell your story, but part of me is worried people will think I'm showing off or playing victim or whatever." "Jazz, your teacher's right. This is history. It's uncomfortable history, and it's recent history, but it matters. If you want to do the presentation, I'll help you. If you don't want to, that's okay too. It's your choice." Jasmine chewed on her pencil, thinking, "If I do, will you come to the presentation? If you want me there, I'll be there." "Okay, then I'll do it. But Dad, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Was it worth it? All of it, the lawsuit, the trial, the threats, everything we went through." Marcus looked around the park, at the trees swaying in the breeze, at the people walking their dogs and pushing strollers and living their lives, at his daughter, brave and thoughtful and growing up too fast in a world that would judge her before it knew her. "I don't know if worth it is the right phrase," he said slowly, "but I know that I couldn't have lived with myself if I'd stayed silent. I know that sometimes you have to fight, not because you're guaranteed to win, but because the fight itself matters, because staying silent is a kind of surrender." "That's very philosophical, Dad." Marcus laughed. "Yeah, well, I've had a lot of time to think about it." Tommy showed up 20 minutes later with coffee for Marcus and hot chocolate for Jasmine. He'd been doing that lately, just showing up. Marcus appreciated it more than he could say. "Big news," Tommy said, settling onto the bench. "The Atlanta PD just announced their new training program, mandatory 8-hour course on implicit bias taught by outside consultants, and they're forming a civilian review board for complaint investigations." "That's because of the court order," Marcus said. "Yeah, but they're going beyond the minimum. The new chief, she's actually taking this seriously. She cited your case specifically in her press conference, said it was a wake-up call." Marcus wanted to feel victorious, but all he felt was tired. One department, one city. There are thousands more out there doing the same things. "So we keep fighting. We use your case as a blueprint. Other people file suits, other departments get forced to change. It's not fast, but it's movement." Jasmine looked up from her hot chocolate. "Uncle Tommy, do you think things will be different when I'm Dad's age?" Tommy considered the question seriously. "I think they'll be better. Not perfect, but better. Because of people like your dad who refuse to accept the way things are." "I hope so," Jasmine said quietly. "I really hope so." They sat there until the sun started setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Marcus thought about his father, who'd fought these same battles in different forms. Thought about his mother, who'd raised him to stand up even when standing up was dangerous. Thought about all the people who'd come before, who'd marched and protested and bled so that Marcus could sit on this bench and read a book without fear. He wasn't naive enough to think one lawsuit had fixed everything. The work would continue. The fight would continue. But for today, for this moment, he'd done what he could. He'd stood up, he'd spoken out, he'd refused to be silent. And maybe that was enough. Not to solve everything, but to keep the momentum going. To pass the torch to the next generation, to Jasmine and kids like her who would inherit both the progress and the work still left to do. As they packed up to leave, Marcus took one last look at the bench where it had all started, where Derek Chandler had looked at him and seen a threat, where Marcus had made the choice to fight back instead of accepting the injustice. "Come on, Dad," Jasmine said, tugging his hand. "Mom's making dinner." Marcus smiled, let his daughter lead him toward the parking lot. Behind them, the park settled into evening quiet. The bench sat empty, waiting for the next person who needed a peaceful place to read. But Marcus knew the truth now. There were no truly peaceful places, not for people who looked like him, not yet. Maybe not ever. But there were places worth fighting for, Moments worth defending, rights worth claiming over and over again until claiming them became so ordinary that no one thought to question it. He'd done that. For himself, for Jasmine, for everyone who came after. And if he had to do it again tomorrow, he would. Because that's what it meant to live with dignity in a world that didn't always offer it freely. You fought for it. You demanded it. You refused to accept anything less.